One continuing feature will begin today on this channel. It's called Who Got the ICC Numbers? For those new to my channel, or if you want to know more about these ICC numbers, I'll tell you briefly about them. Part of the 1935 Motor Carrier Act was the requirement by any person or company engaged in transporting freight across state lines to apply for an operating certificate with the Interstate Commerce Commission, or ICC. These operating certificates were formerly called Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessities. Many states had been issuing similar certificates to carriers of freight within state boundaries. As these carriers had expanded across state lines, it had become necessary for the ICC to begin regulating the trucking industry. When applications arrived at the offices of the ICC, those applications would be assigned a MC, or motor carrier number. That number and the files related to it would be known as a docket. That docket number would be assigned to that individual or company as part of their permanent file. Regardless of future activities, additions, or changes, that ICC number would always stay with that trucking entity. This video is all about a certain ICC motor carrier number, ICC MC 50190. You'll find out about the who, what, when, where, and why about that number. First, applications for operating authority were sent to the ICC from those who wanted to get rights as different types of trucking companies. Those wanting to transport general commodities would apply for a certificate. Generally, motor carriers of general commodities seek businesses from any firm needing to ship freight. Contract carriers usually hauled freight for certain companies as their preferred source of transportation. When applying for authority, the ICC would grant them a permit. In this example of Who Got the ICC Numbers, the application for MC 50190 sought to receive a permit as a contract carrier. So now let's answer the questions about who got MC 50190. I'll tell you the who, what, when, where, and why. Who received and was assigned that number from the ICC? It was Joseph A. O'Neill, who lived in Sharptown, Maryland. What type of application did he use in hopes of being granted operating rights? He applied for a permit to engage as a contract carrier of interstate freight. When did he apply for his contract carrier permit? His application was filed with the ICC on April 16, 1936. As was common practice, a hearing was held to hear his case. All across the country, the ICC established what was called joint boards, which were regional groups of ICC appointees who would hear the details of cases in local areas and make recommendations as to whether the ICC should grant or deny applications for authority. Mr. O'Neill's hearing before a joint board was held on August 31st, 1936. After the hearing, the joint board recommended approval for granting his application, and his permit was granted on September 21st, 1936. You may be asking why, if the Motor Carrier Act was signed into law on July 1st, 1935, why it took until August of the next year to get approval for Mr. O'Neill for his contract carrier permit. Well, it took time to organize everything from the date in February 1936, when applications began arriving at the ICC offices. It also took time to establish procedures for case hearings and so forth. And with the vast number of applications being received, it took several years just to get through the initial wave of applications from those already doing business in the trucking industry. Now on to where the application desired the rights to include. Joseph A. O'Neill applied for a contract carrier permit to transport timber and lumber between the following points using the following routes. between Sharptown, Maryland and Denton, Maryland over State Highway 313. Slightly over 40 miles in length, it went through several towns along the way, including El Dorado, Finchville, Federalsburg, Concord, and Andersontown. This route was entirely within the state of Maryland. Another route was between Sharptown, Maryland and Seaford, Delaware, a distance of only about 13 miles. Definitely an interstate route, since it crosses state lines. Another interstate route applied for was between Sharptown and Hebron, Maryland over state highways 313 and 213, a distance of only a few miles. Over the same highways was a request to travel further to Salisbury. The Sharptown to Seaford route also had one that went further to Bridgeville, Delaware. And now for the reason why he wanted the ICC to grant him operating rights. Mr. O'Neill had been hauling timber and lumber for G. Howard Gordy exclusively for 10 years. There was no rail service for 10 miles from Sharptown, and no other carriers served the town. The Interstate Commerce Commission did accept the recommendation of the Joint Board to grant Joseph A. O'Neill the operating authority he applied for in request to the interstate rights that enabled him to legally haul freight between Maryland and Delaware. That's it for this first episode of Who Got the ICC Numbers. Let me know in the comments if you like this new feature, and we'll continue it again. You never know what number is going to come up, as there were over 120,000 numbers that the ICC granted during regulation. Talk to you next time. Bye.